My name is Marcia Black. It is Thursday, August 22nd, 2024, and I am speaking to.
Lenora Williams.
And where and when were you born?
I was born in Detroit, Michigan, um, in October of 1949.
Thank you. And what is your connection to Black Bottom?
Well, I essentially grew up there between, I'll say, around the ages of 5 to maybe 14 or 15. I grew up in Black Bottom. It's what we call Black Bottom. Now, some have disputed the perimeters, but I was always told that we lived in Black Bottom. So that's what I'm going by.
And do you remember the address or or any cross streets of like where you were?
Yes, I believe it was 2224 St. Alban. It was between Verner Highway and Waterloo.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I definitely heard people talk about that as Black Bottom, but like you said, the depending on who you talk to, the boundaries are debatable. So,
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
thank you for sharing that. Can you share about your family story of how they got to Black Bottom? Any information you have about that?
Yes, well, actually, my father hailed from Darth. I don't know if I'm getting his city correct, but I think he said it was Dartmouth, Georgia. And my mother was from Mobile, not Mobile. They don't say that. They say Mobile, Alabama. And so they both ended up in Ohio. Now, there's an interesting story about my father. Around the age of, I don't know, maybe 16, 17 years old, he stole a bicycle. And the punishment for stealing that bicycle in Georgia was to put him on the chain gang. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but men are chained up in striped suits and they're working on the railroad and hammering away rocks and stones and that sort of thing. But to make a long story short, I don't know how, he didn't say exactly, but he escaped and hitchhiked and I don't know, tracked his way, as they called it back then, up north. And he went to Ohio. I'm not sure how my mother ended up in Ohio, but she did. And that's where they met and married and then moved to Detroit. And my father got a job working in one of the factories here. I'm not sure if it was Chrysler or Ford's, but he dropped a piece of steel on his foot. Subsequently, they gave him a large lump sum of money. He left the factory, took the money, and bought a business. He bought a tavern or bar, and it was called the Red Rooster. And it was definitely in Black Bottom because it was on a street called Hastings and Division. And that I do remember. Hastings and Division is the street that his bar was located on. And that's how my father made his living, and that's how we were supported.
Thank you for sharing that. And did
Mm-hmm.
you have any siblings growing up?
I did. So I had one sister and three brothers. And now there's only two siblings left. That's me and my youngest brother. And of course, his nickname was Pookie, because I don't know why so many families had a Pookie. And we had a junior too, a Junebug and a Pookie. But anyway, so three of my siblings have passed, and I just have the one, my youngest brother and myself. Both my parents, of course, are deceased. And so just me and my brother left. And see, I wrote down a few things. We actually lived behind Joe Meur's. Joe Meur's, I don't know if you're familiar with them, they're a seafood restaurant. And back then, Blacks could not eat in Joe Meur's. We weren't allowed to eat there as far as I knew. But their parking lot was behind my backyard. And so we played in that parking lot. And sometimes if they had leftover crab legs, they give them to my dad, or a little small lobster tail or something. And he boiled them, we'd eat them. And I remember that so well, playing in Joe Meur's parking lot, because that's when hula hoops came out, and I got they were 10 cents, if you can believe that, the cost. And I'm sorry, that's Amazon. And I learned the hula hoop. I learned to ride a bicycle. And I also remember getting stung by a bee in the chest. My one and only bee sting was in the back of Joe Meur's restaurant, Black Bottom. And I learned to ride a bike there, of course, because I'm young. And I was chased by a dog and bit on the knee. And my dad took me to the hospital. They found the dog. I didn't have to get rabies shots, but I got bandaged up. And he took me, I remember he took me to the bar with him, because you could do that back then. Nobody said anything. He brought a kid in there. He was the owner. And he told everybody, they said, "What happened to your daughter?" And I remember he told everybody that I bit the dog. That was funny. I
Mhm.
thought it was funny back then anyway. So he told everybody I bit the dog, but that was just my dad's personality. He was funny like that. And let's see what else I can tell you about family. Well, that's mostly it about family. We were, close, and we all had same parents, same mother and father. We weren't steps or anything. And so we pretty much got along. Let me see. The community was, I wrote down some stuff. We were really a close-knit community, and it's true what they say about it takes a village. We were like a village because, I don't know, back then you didn't talk back to grown-ups. If you were caught doing something, your parents were around, other people, adults, were allowed to chastise you or even spank you. Nobody got mad and said, "Don't put your hands on my kid." It's like, what did my kid do? Okay, you got them. I'm gonna give them another swat when they get home. That's kind of just the way it was back then. And let's see, what else did I write down? Well, of course we weren't rich, but we weren't poor either. As far as I was concerned, if we were, we didn't know it because everybody was kind of in the same boat. So there was not a class thing back then, like you have more than we do, you're better than us, and we were so close knit that nobody locked their doors. Now that's one thing I think was one of the questions I was reviewing that I miss a lot. Of course, I'm suburban now. I fled Detroit like everybody else. The crime, I loved my home that I had in Detroit, and I was afraid, and because we'd been broken into a couple times, threatened, window buses, things like that. So the sense of community was gone, and so I'm a suburbanite now. But I miss not having to lock my door and have a camera on the front and the back and on the side and a Ring doorbell. You know, you
Mhm.
just walked into somebody's house and you just said, "Tulu, anybody home? Oh, come on in." And somebody was always cooking a pot of greens and cornbread and all that, black eyed peas. Come on, have something to eat. I mean, that's just kind of the way it was. And so I do miss that. And the other thing is, people didn't have necessarily high paying jobs, but they worked. I think I wrote down some of the things. Well, one of my friends, and we're still friends today. I'm still friends with a couple of the ladies that I think you'll be interviewing, Patricia, Burnett, and Linda Lowery. The
Yes,
three,
we did.
yeah, we still hang out together, and we've known each other since we were 5 or 6 years old. So many in our group, though, has passed on, unfortunately. But there's just a few of us left. And so I remember one of the girls that we played with, her parents, her mom was a maid and her father was a chauffeur, and they had the snazziest uniforms. I mean, they looked good, and we didn't look down. We didn't think there was anything wrong with that. They were a chauffeur and a maid. I won't call names, but one person's father was a numbers man. I'm not calling anything. We had like somebody was a car mechanic. Another friend, her father was a musician. We had a school teacher, a couple school teachers. Another guy that lived across the street from me, his father was a chef and a caterer. Uh, Good food, really good food. Uh, I remember taking piano lessons from a lady, so that was like her side hustle. Somebody on the record store now, I cannot recall the name of it, but one of the other ladies may know. There was and I did babysitting. Like I say, these weren't high paying jobs, but everybody felt respected because they did work. No one was begging for a handout. Although, if you needed a cup of sugar or a cup of flour, that's kind of the way it was. Hey, you got a cup of sugar? Yeah, come on over and get it. And that's just kind of the way it was back then. We also lived. Now, this wasn't in Black Bottom, but we lived so close that we walked the Eastern Market. On Saturdays, I get 50 cents allowance. And I would walk over, me and some of the other girls, we walk over to Eastern Market and have lunch. And, I remember buying a bag with potato chips and a pop. That's kind of what we did. I buy fake fingernails, or we buy pot holder kits and make little pot holders. You got a little stretch thing and some pieces of fabrics, and you string it together and you make a pot holder. It would be all different colors. They were ugly as heck, but we thought they were fun. We do stuff like that. And I tell you what we did at Eastern Market. There were slaughter houses over there, and we would sneak up and peek through and watch them. I don't know how we could stand it. Today I probably pass out. We watched them slaughter animals, and anyway, we did that, and just the smells and all that. Ugh. Anyhow, those are some of the things we did. We played street games mostly because everybody didn't have a TV. We were fortunate enough to have a black and white TV with rabbit ears. When I tell you the reception was horrible, you had to play with those ears and you get all that fuzzy snow stuff on the screen. But we had one, and we watched all the kiddie shows. I'm trying to think of some of the names of them. Howdy Doody and cartoons, Mighty Mouse and Popeye, and let's see what some of the other shows we watched. Milton Berle show, and even a little later, Nat King Cole actually had his own show. He was one of the few Black entertainers that actually had a TV show, and he'd have guests, and of course sing and play the piano. Let's see what else.
I was gonna ask, what were some other places that you remember that you frequented?
Oh, okay. So I wrote down because I knew I wouldn't remember right away. Oh, so there were, like I say, there were Black businesses too. There was Mr. Bell's. He had penny candy and candy store and ice cream and stuff like that. He was a little corner store. We could walk there. We go to Mr. Bell's. There was Nelson's restaurant. My dad would go down there and eat breakfast a lot of times, and we go down and get ice cream cones. There was a counter that you could sit down and eat dinner and breakfast or whatever they would lunch. And then there was another counter to the left that sold things like cigarettes, which of course we didn't buy, but cigarettes and something called stand back. It's like an aspirin in an envelope, if you can believe that. I don't know if they still sell them.
And what's an aspirin?
It was like an aspirin in a
little aspirin. Gotcha.
In a little packet, and okay, you would take that if you had a headache. And what else did they sell in there? Oh, 3 6s, cough syrup, stuff like that. Confections and candy and stuff. And I would go there for the milkshakes and malts were the absolute top of the line. There was another place, now I can't remember the name, but we would go there and get shrimp. We'd chip in and buy shrimp, and it would come in a white carton like you get at a Chinese restaurant. and they'd be loaded with hot sauce. You're talking about good. Oh my goodness. And let me see some other business. Oh, there was Jack and Joe's. This was a business not far from Miller Junior High School. And he also had a counter with, ice cream sodas and shakes and malts and pop and cheeseburgers and stuff like that. And he had a jukebox. So we would, a nickel. And we would dance and go to his business. Let me see. Of course, there was Miller Junior High School. When my mom went, it was a high school. When I went, it was a junior high. And I went to Norvell Elementary School. Some of the people went to Duffield, which was really in Black Bottom. Norvell actually was kind of, to me, out of Black Bottom, but that's where I walked to school down Gratiot. Let me see. I'm trying to think of some other businesses. Nelson's, Jack and Joe's. We weren't far from Elmwood Cemetery, too. That was a famous cemetery. At that time, Blacks weren't buried there. I don't know if they may be today. At that time, Blacks were not buried there. Our neighborhood was not integrated. I rarely saw a person other than my own race growing up there. It was almost as if they didn't exist, but I know they did, of course. But we didn't have a lot of interaction with them at the time when I was growing up. And like I said, we felt safe. I mean, of course, there's always a little petty crime. There was nothing too serious going on. My grandmother and grandfather, they lived even further in Black Bottom. They lived on the street called Ripel, if I can recall. And we would go to visit them. They never ever locked their doors because we always just walked in. I can remember that. Let's see.
So you had a lot of extended family in Black Bottom too? You mentioned your grandparents.
Oh yeah, my grandparents and my aunt, and let's see what I wrote down here. We didn't live far from the Wonder Bread Bakery. When we would walk to school, you could smell the bread. Oh, it smelled so good. And I think Wonder Bread is still making bread today, if I'm not mistaken. But we walked everywhere almost. I'm trying to see, did I write any other businesses? I can't remember the businesses, but I do remember I learned to swim at Miller. So they had an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and they had a partition they could put across there so that the boys could swim on the left and the girls could swim on the right. And that's where I learned in order to pass, you had to jump in 10 feet of water and learn how to tread water. We had to do that, and you had to swim the length and back of the pool in order to pass. And you had to take swimming. You had to take gym back then. I've heard that a lot of kids don't have to take all that stuff now, that they don't have music, and I don't know. But I think that kind of stuff is important for the kids to have physical education as well as art and music to round out, of course, the academic. And they've gotten rid of so much stuff. My grandfather also was an entrepreneur. Of course, I didn't know that word back then. But he had an ice cream truck. I remember he had a vegetable truck, and you go through the neighborhood yelling fresh greens, green beans, turnips, and he'd sell that stuff, watermelons, and he'd be yelling that out, and he'd go through and sell it. That's how he actually made money doing that, Well, I mean, the cost of living was so low, and he didn't he didn't live in like a fancy place or anything, so he didn't need a lot of money actually. So we got by like that. Now we had one of the biggest houses on the block, and I don't know, Linda or Pat may mention that because they like to come to our house, and we had like a little dance floor almost And we had a record player back then. There was not even CDs and tapes and all that stuff. You had a record player. And so we dance and have house parties and, stuff like that for entertainment. Street games, kick the can, mumbly peg, where you toss a knife up with certain moves in the dirt. I don't know if you're familiar with that. You're kind of young. You may have heard of it before. So we play those kind of games, kick the can, hide and seek, and we had to be in when the street lights came on. When it started getting dark, everybody started running. You had to be home. So let's see. Like I say, we were very close knit. I didn't know, like I said, that some of the people were struggling or poor because you just didn't know it. If they were, I'm sure they were. Some were, but we just didn't know it. And now we found out. My parents told us that we had to move, and of course we were like, why? Because they're going to bring a freeway through here, and they're going to tear our house down. And of course, we cried, and we didn't understand that. And I thought that was just terrible that they could do that, and they could. They did. And so that was really sad. That's how we found out that our parents told us that we had to move because they were going to they tore our house down, all those houses and businesses. They tore them down. And now I think they have some condos over there. But Miller Junior High School is still standing. That, at least I'm happy about that. And the Elmwood Cemetery is still there, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But my junior high school is still there. My high school has been torn down. I went to Eastern High School. That was not in Black Bottom. That was on Mac and East Grand Boulevard. They tore that down and rebuilt it on Lafayette and named it Martin Luther King. You may have heard of King High School.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it used to be Eastern, which is, I was the last graduating class. Pat and I were the last graduating class from Eastern. Let's see what else I can think about Black Bottom.
How long did your father have, it was a restaurant, you said the Red Rooster, or a bar?
It was a bar.
A bar. How long did he have that bar?
Oh, okay. So he had it as long as we were there, but I remember him moving the bar. He moved the bar from Black Bottom to Gratiot. Gratiot near, I can't think of the street now, unfortunately, but he moved the bar to Gratiot. I'm trying to see if I can think of that cross street. Yeah, but he had the bar throughout his life, but he moved it to different locations as things, developed or what have you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he still had the bar, but he just moved it from Black Bottom. And go ahead.
I was gonna say, what eventually happened to it?
They probably tore it down. They tore down those businesses, just like they did our house and, well, everybody's house over there. They tore down those businesses, and I don't know what they did down there, but I do know in our neighborhood, they built some condos and came through with a freeway and, some other stuff. But I do remember that he still had the bar. He just moved it to Gratiot. I don't remember the cross street, but nothing. But we walked mostly everywhere, like I said before, because my father had a car, but none of us drove or anything. We were too young. But and we had bikes. So we either biked or walked, and this was later when we moved from Black Bottom. We walked to Belle Isle because I lived near East Grand Boulevard when we moved. We were able to actually, I don't know if you know this, but Belle Isle had an underground tunnel. Not only did it have a bridge, you could go up under the tunnel without going across the bridge. You could walk it and bike it, and we did that frequently. Instead of going across, we went under. But they closed that off years ago. Let me see. I'm trying to stick with Black Bottom because I'm starting to we moved. I'm starting to think about other locations. Let me get back to Black Bottom.
So you mentioned that, you found out about, your home being destroyed and y'all had to relocate. Where did you end up relocating to?
We moved over to, like I was saying, we could walk to Belle Isle. We moved over on Kercheval Street. Trying to think of I'm not good with these cross streets, but we moved on Kercheval. We were near Jefferson, closer to Jefferson where Belle Isle was, and what was over there, Lafayette and Concord and those kind of streets. Yeah, we moved way over there. We moved a long ways away. And Pat and I kind of lost touch for a while, and she moved to New Jersey, but she moved back here, and we found each other on classmates.com. And I would run into Linda every now and then because she moved away and moved back to Detroit. And so we all ended up getting back together and start hanging out
That's beautiful.
and stuff.
When your family moved, I know you were younger, but do you remember your family experiencing or mentioning like any hardships or challenges of, having to move? Anything specific?
Well, we moved to a smaller house, actually. We moved to a two-family flat. And at that time, my parents were I don't know if the move had anything to do with my parents was starting to kind of grow apart and they were getting ready to split up. They never actually got a divorce though, but they ended up separating. I do remember that. And that was traumatic for us. When you're a kid, you wonder if you did something, what, caused this. I mean, you don't know when you're young, but yeah, it was just mostly, I was mostly heartbreaking because I wouldn't think I would never see my friends again. Little did I know that we'd all end up getting in touch again with each other. One of the girls that I grew up with in Black Bottom, we were both at a party and I could hear somebody giggling behind me. And I was saying, who is this girl? I wish she stopped that crazy. She had a funny laugh, right? And I turned around and she looked at me and I looked at her and we both started screaming and everybody's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? Sheila Hodges was her name. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that. Anyway, we grabbed each other and we started jumping up and down screaming. Everybody, what's the matter? We're like, we haven't seen each other since we were kids in Black Bottom. And I think her name is Sheila Anderson now. But anyway, so I ran into so many people that I grew up with back then, and it's always been exciting and fun because we were all sad to get split up. Let's see, and there's another lady I ran into. She's a principal of a school. Her sister moved to Chicago, and she became a what do you call the people that marched for Black causes?
Activist, organizer.
She was an activist. She was a Black activist, is what she ended up doing. And like I say, so many have passed on, but there's a few left, that we run into. Let me see that I want to mention. I wrote down some stuff, but I can't read my own writing.
It's okay. So I'm curious from your perspective, how do you think Black Detroiters are impacted today by the destruction of Black Bottom and Paradise Valley?
I think that we no longer have a tight-knit community like we used to have. Like I mentioned before, even though I'm in suburbia, I have a Ring doorbell, I have cameras everywhere, I have alarm system that goes to ADT. I know my neighbors, but we're not, to me, people are not as friendly. We try. So I'm in a mixed neighborhood, which is fine. When I say diverse, I mean, you name a race, we're here. I mean, we try. We had an ice cream social the other day, but it's just not the same camaraderie that we had in Black Bottom. I think we felt kind of safe and secure in our little community. Everybody knew everybody, and everybody's parents were like, if you see my child doing something, you check them. Well, they didn't say check them back then, but you can spank them if you want to. It just wasn't the same. I think we're impacted also because we were a little more self-reliant, and that we didn't depend on other races, as much as we do today. Like I said, everybody worked, everybody helped each other. It was more of a camaraderie, stick together, we're all in this together type attitude to me. That was from my perspective as a young person. Maybe it wasn't like that at all, but that's the way I saw it, that we stuck together more. We were just more, we would help each other more. And, to me, when the drugs came in and the crime, that kind of just, to me, tore Detroit up. Like I say, I'm a native Detroiter. Most of the friends I have now that I run into, they're from somewhere else. I'm actually born in Detroit and raised in Detroit. And I can appreciate when Detroit was not the murder capital of the world. There was not, people selling drugs on the corner. We did not have gangs and all that stuff. I'm not saying there was no crime. Don't get me wrong. I'm not that naive, but it wasn't like it is today. If somebody got into a fight, they fought with their fists. They may have cursed you out. Once in a while, there was a stab, but nobody was getting shot in the head, carjacked, that sort of thing. The crimes weren't as violent. I'm not saying there was no crime. It wasn't as violent. And what I missed is the sense of community. I miss the sense that Blacks patronized Blacks. Let me say that. We patronized our own in our community. Like I said, the ones who had restaurants and stores and businesses, and even my dad, who had a bar, we patronized each other. That's what we knew, that's what we did. And we didn't have, I guess, a banking system like some races where you could borrow money where you pooled it. But if somebody needed something, they could borrow money, I remember one girl that I grew up with. Now, her father, he was a bootlegger. That's how he made his money, because people drank and smoke. I'm not saying that stuff didn't happen, but he sold, what do they call that? Moonshine. I want to say he made liquor in the bathtub, and he sold it. People bought it. My dad had a legitimate bar, but a lot of people still went and bought the moonshine because that's what they knew, that's what they wanted. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to think of something. Well, I think I mentioned that everybody didn't have a TV. Sometimes if there was something good on, everybody piled up somebody's house who did have a TV to watch. And of course, the TVs were black and white. We watched Amos and Andy. Now that was a Black show. And it was a comedy, and there was a character there named Kingfish. Always getting into trouble. But we watched Jack Benny, Milton Berle, Howdy Doody, stuff like that. And TV actually went off at night. I don't know if it was 11 or 12, but they did the Star Spangled Banner, and then TV went off. No TV. And there was only like 3 channels, 2, 4, and 7. And later on, we got channel 50 and channel 20 and channel 56, public TV. But back then, we had 3 channels, 2, 4, and 7. That's all you got. No cable. And I made the, I don't want to call it dumb, but I made the statement that I'm never paying for TV when they started talking about cable. Of course I do. cable up the yin yang and streaming service. But back then we didn't have that. And times were simpler, some ways better, some ways not. I like technology when it works. I like AI when it works. You know, everybody didn't have a telephone. And those who did have a phone would have something called a party line, meaning you have to share your line. If you picked up the phone, somebody else could be talking on it. How long are you going to be on the phone? I'll be off soon. Then you could make your call. Crazy, crazy, you know, when you think about it. And your parents told you back then, you always better carry a dime because that's how much it costs to use a payphone. They were located throughout the city. Every so many corners, there was a payphone. And no cell phones, no pagers, of course. That's how you had to make sure you carry a dime when you went somewhere because you had to make a phone call. You better get to a phone booth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I mean, you know, this is just the way it was. It was a simpler time and a simpler way of life, and that's what I'm going to say. You didn't even lock your car doors. Can you imagine?
Yeah, that's amazing.
We didn't lock it, and we had a movie theater. We had one that we would go to, the Rialto. I think it was either 10 cents or 15. I want to say 10 cents to get in. Loaf of bread was like a nickel. Like I just, you know.
So the I-375 project is proposing to tear down I-375, one of the developments that replaced the Black Bottom community. And they're saying that as part of that, there should be 20 to 30 acres of land available for development. From your perspective, what do you think could happen in those 20 to 30 acres of land as a way to repair the harm that was done?
Oh my. I don't know what they would do, but I will say this. I don't know what we should get, but I do think that blacks are entitled. And I mean, listen, the American Indians were given all these casinos and with millions of dollars coming in, all this money. When they locked up the Japanese in concentration camps due to Pearl Harbor being bombed, and they didn't know who was who according to them, and you know who them are, they are. They got compensated. Other races were compensated for, you know, and being put in concentration camps, for being treated badly, for taking the Indians' land. Nothing given to us. And so I think we should get some reparations myself, personally. I don't know how much, but I do think we should get some. Absolutely do. Yes, ma'am. I don't know what they're going to do with that land, but more than likely some rich developer will come along and build some more condos. I hope not, but I don't know. I would like to see, you know, maybe just some type of community-based development for blacks. Maybe, excuse me, getting folks started in their own business. I mean, I think we need to be a little more self-sufficient, but I don't know how all that, you know, I don't know how all that would come to fruition. I just don't. But I am hoping that I do agree that we should get paid. You know, I don't know who suffered any worse than we had, maybe the Jewish people, but you know, I don't know, you know, be honest with you. I don't have the answer, but I'm just hoping something good comes from it. But I don't know what they're going to do with that freeway closed. A lot of people take it, including myself, to get downtown now. I've taken it. I won't lie, you know. So I don't know what their thinking is. Have you heard what they plan to do with it?
I mean, they want to turn it into a boulevard. But in terms of what it actually be on the land, there's no plan yet. Which is why we want to make sure that we're asking people who used to live in that community and just Black Detroiters overall what they'd like to see. Because otherwise, our perspectives and our voices won't be included at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just want to make sure that that's being documented and can be incorporated into this future plan.
Well, I would like to see Black businesses get first crack at having businesses in that area. That because so many Blacks lost their businesses when they came through and didn't give us a choice and start tearing down our houses, our businesses, and we scattered. I mean, I was sad when Mayor back then for so many years, Coleman Young said, if you don't like it, hit 8 Mile Road. I didn't like it because not only that we had white flight, but Blacks who could afford it left also. And there goes your tax base, and your city is going to go kapooey. I mean, that's just reality. The people who pay taxes are the people who left. So, you don't want to alienate people like that. But I would hope the Black businesses get first shot and that we patronize those Black businesses. And that's the other thing. We need to support each other. We have to. We just don't have a choice in that matter. We just have to support each other or we won't make it. We used to be the majority minority, if that makes sense. We aren't. I think the Hispanics are the majority minority now, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, correct me. But that's what I believe. Someone told me that, and I didn't look it up, but they're probably right. So,
Why is it important for future generations? What is most important for future generations to remember about Black Bottom?
well, I think like I said before, I think they need to know and remember that we were a can-do community. We were mostly self-reliant, self-sufficient. We patronized other Blacks, didn't think anything of it. We had our own businesses. We had self-respect and self-dignity. That's the thing. We had self-respect and we had self-dignity because we weren't always dependent on some other race to pull us through. And so I think it's important for them to know that we did this and that it can be done again, even if we're scattered to the burbs. We say that, but do we do it? Let's support each other. We need to put our money where our mouth is, so to speak. We need to support each other mentally, physically, and financially. And so that's my feelings on that.
And why is it important for the histories of Black Bottom to be preserved and passed on?
Well, it sounds like a cliche, but if you don't know, you need to know where you came from to know where you're going or where you can go. You need to know that, you need to know the possibilities. If we did it before, we can do it again. It's like I said, it's a can-do attitude that it's important for young people to know. And do not be ashamed of your ancestors. Do not be ashamed of your people. We've done many great things. Maybe you're just not familiar with it. So they need to know the history that in Black Bottom, we came together, we stuck together, we lived together, played together, cried together, and worked together, and owned businesses together. They need to know that. And I mean, it's not all doom and gloom. There are lots of Black businesses even today, but they're not always supported. I see so many that end up going out of business, and they just need to have support and know-how. I don't have all the answers, of course. I don't have the answers, but I just am hopeful for the future. Without hope, we have nothing. I'm not trying to quote Michelle Obama, but we do need hope. It's like, again, it sounds like a cliche, but it's true. It is what it is. We need to have hope. Without hope, you have nothing but doom and despair. So that's just how I feel about it.
Is there anything else you want to get on record that we haven't talked about so far?
Well, I think there was a question on there about my feelings and how I want to be remembered. I
Yeah.
want to be remembered as a God-fearing person who has a respect for my elders, and I'm family oriented, and I care about my community, and I want us to stick together, to come together, and to just be better. I go with the cliches, like Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better. And that's another reason they need to know about the history. They need to know that we haven't always depended on some other race to lift us up. We have to lift ourselves up. We can't depend on that. You know, we got a crazy psychopath running for president. We really need to stick together. You know, I don't want to get into politics, but you know, we just have to
Hmm.
save our race, and we got to get help for the drugs. I think if we get rid of the drugs, we don't not going to ever cut down all crime. Crime has been around since time began, but we can certainly cut it down. Cut it back. So we need more programs. We do need help in doing this. So that's about it for me.